Chapter 1. The Ghost in My Bed. I woke because someone was touching my face. Cold fingertips rested against my cheek. For 1 second, I stayed still, caught somewhere between sleep and the familiar feeling that something was watching me. Then I opened my eyes. Mei was lying beside me, staring, very close. "Why are you in my bed? You complained when I watched from the chair." That was not an invitation. Mei considered this seriously. "You should have been more specific." I stared at her. She stared back. Apparently, this was my life now. I reached out and pushed her face away, then stopped. Her cheek was cold beneath my palm, solid, completely, unmistakably solid. Mei went still too, her eyes lowered to my hand, then slowly returned to my face. Neither of us moved. That was the problem. I pulled my hand back too quickly and sat up. Mei watched me. "You are strange this morning. You're in my bed. I was here yesterday. That does not help." I got up. Behind me, the mattress shifted. Of course, she followed. She followed me to the bathroom, too. I closed the door. A second later, her voice came from outside. "Why did you close it?" "Because I'm in the bathroom." "I know." "Then why are you asking?" Silence. I waited. Nothing. When I opened the door again, Mei was still standing exactly where I had left her. "Were you waiting there the whole time?" "Yes." I decided not to ask why. In the kitchen, I made coffee while Mei sat at the table and watched me. She had been doing that a lot lately, watching me sleep, watching me eat, watching me use my phone. Apparently, dying several hundred years ago left a person with many questions. I placed my coffee on the table. Mei reached for it. "Don't." Her fingers stopped against the cup. "I know I cannot drink it." "Then why are you touching it?" She looked at the steam rising between her fingers. "I wanted to know if it was warm." I paused. "It is." "I know." Her fingers remained against the cup for another second. Then she let go. Later we sat on the sofa. Or rather, I sat on the sofa. Mei sat close enough that half of it had become decorative. A shampoo commercial played on the television. A woman looked miserable. She washed her hair. Suddenly, she was smiling, surrounded by friends and apparently successful in every part of her life. Mei watched carefully. "Will that happen to you?" I looked at her. "What?" "If you use that shampoo." "No." "Why?" "Because they want me to buy shampoo." Mei looked back at the television. "They are lying?" "Professionally." Her expression became slightly disturbed. I took a sip of coffee. The program returned. Mei leaned closer to watch, her hair brushing against my shoulder. I shifted away. She followed without noticing. I shifted again. This time she looked at me. "What?" "Nothing." She stared at me for another second, then turned back to the television. I tried to do the same. It did not work. Instead, I became aware of something else. "You don't sleep." Mei looked at me. "No." I already knew that. I had just never really thought about what it meant. When I slept, she remained awake. Hours passed. The apartment went dark. The city quieted, and Mei waited. "Don't you get bored?" "Sometimes." "What do you do?" She looked at me. "Wait." The word settled somewhere uncomfortable. Mei had spent too long waiting, in the manor, in the bridal room, for footsteps that never came. That sounds terrible. Mei tilted her head. "You wake up." I looked at her. She had already turned back to the television. I did not know what to say, so I said nothing. A few minutes later, the screen went dark. For a moment, the black glass reflected the room. Mei beside me, my coffee on the table, and someone standing behind her. I turned. Nothing. The apartment was empty. I looked back at the television. The figure was gone. Red text flickered across the dark screen. Entity status recalculation. My body went still. Then the television returned to normal. Mei looked at me. "What?" I kept staring at the screen. "Nothing." She accepted the answer. I didn't. For the rest of the morning, I kept watching the dark parts of the screen. Chapter 2. You two live together now? I had not seen Nara since Black Station. We exchanged numbers after surviving the train, But Red Veil pulled me into another domain before either of us had much to say. We stayed loosely in contact. Mostly short messages, still alive. Yes, you? Unfortunately, 3 days ago, I made the mistake of telling her Mei was still here. Now she was at my door. You came quickly. You told me a domain boss followed you home. She didn't follow me home. From the sofa, Mei looked away from the television. You promised to show me. Nara stopped. She looked at Mei, then at me, then back at Mei. You two are living together in real life now too? I nearly dropped the drinks. It's not like that. You brought a domain boss home. I did not bring her home. Mei looked at Nara. She promised to. Nara slowly smiled. I already regretted opening the door. We sat down. Nara took the chair opposite us. Me sat beside me. Too close, apparently. I only realized because Nara kept looking at the space between us. What? Nothing. That sounded suspiciously familiar. I ignored her and picked up my phone. A second later, Mei took it directly from my hand. I looked at her. What are you doing? The woman is selling the shampoo. She pointed at an advertisement. The lying one. Nara made a strange sound. I looked at her. Are you all right? Perfectly. Mei leaned closer and placed one hand on my shoulder to see the screen. Nara stared again. Does she do that all the time? Do what? Nara looked at Mei's hand. Then at me. I followed her gaze. Mei was still touching my shoulder. What? Nara closed her eyes briefly. Nothing. I was beginning to dislike that word. Her expression changed a few minutes later. The amusement disappeared. How long has she been here? Since the last domain. Constantly? Yes. She hasn't disappeared once? I hesitated. The dark television screen flashed through my mind. The figure behind Mei. Entity status recalculation. No. Nara watched me for a second longer. I looked back at her. She let it go, for now. That shouldn't be possible, she said. Mei looked away from the television. I am aware. Nara frowned. A cleared domain boss disappears. If the domain is unresolved, the boss stays inside it. She looked at Mei carefully. You've done neither. Mei did not seem concerned. Nara leaned forward. You're not supposed to exist here. I am aware of that too. That doesn't concern you? Mei looked at me. Not particularly. Something shifted uncomfortably in my chest. I reached for my coffee. It was cold. Nara noticed. Of course she did. She did not say anything until she was leaving. I walked her to the door while Mei remained on the sofa, watching another advertisement with deep suspicion. Nara lowered her voice. So, I already disliked the tone. Are you dating? No. The answer came too quickly. Nara glanced over my shoulder. Does she know that? I frowned. Know what? Nara stared at me. Then she laughed. I did not see what was funny. Good luck, Jisoo. With what? She left without answering. I closed the door. When I turned around, Mei was standing directly behind me. I stopped. She looked at the closed door. Then at me. What is dating? Chapter 3. The World You Promised Me. What is dating? I stared at Mei. She waited. It's when two people spend time together. We spend time together. Not like that. Then how? I opened my mouth. Nothing useful came out. Mei watched me struggle for several seconds before her expression changed. You mean courting? I paused. Basically. I see. That was easier than expected. Then Mei asked, why did you say no? I looked at her. Because we're not dating. Mei studied my face. For some reason, I became very aware of how close she was standing. Then she nodded. I see. I did not like the way she said it. Later that afternoon, I decided Mei had spent enough time watching television. It had nothing to do with the conversation. Probably. The city was crowded. People passed through Mei without noticing her. She stayed close to me, watching everything with the same quiet attention she once gave the halls of the wedding manor. A woman hurried past us in a suit, talking into her phone. Mei watched her. Where is she going? Work, probably. She works? Yes. For her family? For herself. Mei looked back at the woman. And the money she earns? Also hers. She became quiet. A few streets later, she stopped in front of a shop window. Modern clothes were displayed behind the glass. Mei studied them. Women wear those? Some do. Outside? Yes. She looked at me. By choice? Usually. Mei turned back to the window. The city had become ordinary to me a long time ago. Watching her, I remembered it was not ordinary at all. We kept walking. 2 women passed us, holding hands. I barely noticed them. Mei did. She stopped. I walked several steps before realizing she was no longer beside me. Mei? One of the women was leaving. She leaned closer and kissed the other goodbye. Then she walked away. No one stared. No one stopped. The city continued around them. Mei watched until they disappeared into the crowd. Could they marry? I looked at her. Here? Yes. Her eyes moved back to me. Truly? Not everywhere. And it isn't perfect. I paused. But yes. Mei was silent. Their families cannot simply choose husbands for them. No. And if they refuse, they refuse. Something changed in her expression. Not sadness exactly. Something quieter. I thought of the woman she had waited for. The letter, the bridal room, all those years spent believing she had been abandoned. I gave her space. After a moment, I looked back. Mei was watching me. What? Nothing. She walked past me. Apparently, everyone had decided that was an acceptable answer now. We stayed outside until the sky began to darken. On the way home, Mei looked back at the city. I would like to see more. I smiled. Then I'll show you. Mei flickered. I stopped. For 1 second, I could see the street through her. Then she was solid again. Mei? She looked at me. What? Red light appeared behind her. My smile disappeared. A panel flickered into existence. Future desire detected, then it vanished. Mei turned slightly, following my gaze. Jisoo? I stared at the empty air. For the first time, I wondered if Red Veil was not watching me anymore. It was watching her. Chapter 4. Things Ghosts Shouldn't Want. Mei had questions. A lot of them. How far away is the sea? A few hours. Can we go? Eventually. What is an airplane like? Uncomfortable. I would still like to ride one. I looked up from my phone. Mei was standing beside the table, waiting for an answer to what I suspected was only the beginning. I pushed a piece of paper toward her. Write them down. She looked at it. What? Things you want to see. Things you want to do. Mei considered this. All of them? Within reason. That was my first mistake. I found the list later that evening. Mei had left it on the table. See the sea. Taste coffee. I paused. For some reason, I thought of her fingers resting against my cup. I wanted to know if it was warm. I kept reading. Ride an airplane. Wear modern clothes. Watch snow from somewhere warm. Learn to use a phone. Then I reached the last one. See somewhere women can marry women. I read it twice. Mei, she appeared beside me. Yes? I pointed at the paper. Why is this here? She looked at the line. You told me to write what I wanted. I said things you wanted to do. Is there a difference? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Mei waited. I looked back at the paper. That was when the world disappeared. The sea stretched beneath a pale sky. Mei stood beside it, her red dress moving in the wind. Then she was holding a cup between both hands. Coffee. Steam rose toward her face. The image changed again. City lights, snow against a window, me walking beneath them. Beside me, then everything vanished. I was back in the apartment. The paper trembled slightly between my fingers. None of that had happened. I knew it had not happened. Echo reconstruction showed memories, emotional residue left behind in places and objects. But these were not memories. Red text flickered in front of me. Unclassified residue. Then it disappeared. Mei was watching me. What did you see? I looked down at the list. Do ghosts normally make plans? I don't know. That was not helpful. Mei studied my face. Do you dislike mine? No. The answer came too quickly. Mei noticed. Of course she did. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she took the paper carefully from my hand. Good. That night, I woke suddenly. I did not know why. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. I looked toward the chair. Empty. Mei? No answer. I sat up. The room was empty. 3 seconds. I checked the hallway. 5, the sofa. The kitchen. The bathroom. Mei? 10. Something inside me cracked. I turned back toward the bedroom. Mei appeared directly in front of me. I caught her. Or maybe I grabbed her. I did not know. My arms were already around her. For 1 second I held on. Mei went completely still. Jisoo? Red light filled the room. A panel appeared behind her. Return pending. Chapter 5. The system wants its ghost back. Red light filled the room. Return pending. Mei looked at the words. Return where? I did not answer. I did not know. The panel flickered once, then disappeared. Only then did I realize I was still holding her. My arms were around her waist. Mei had not moved. Neither had I. I let go. Not as quickly as I should have. Mei noticed. She said nothing. The next morning, the streetlights turned red. Not all of them. Only the ones above us. One after another they changed as Mei passed beneath them. I stopped walking. Mei looked up. That is unusual. That's one word for it. We kept moving. A shop window reflected the street ahead. Cars, people, Mei beside me. Then the reflection changed. Red lanterns, a long wooden hallway, the wedding manor. I grabbed Mei's wrist. The image vanished. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then something tightened beneath my fingers. Red threads, thin as hair, wrapped around Mei's wrist. Mei, she looked down. The threads disappeared. Then her hand disappeared too. Not completely. Her fingers became transparent. My grip slipped through them. I froze, so did she. Jisoo. It was the first time I had heard fear in her voice outside a domain. I reached for her again. Nothing. Then her hand became solid. I grabbed it. This time I did not let go. Red light appeared between us. A panel opened. Archived entity, ME status, missing, retrieval pending. I read the words twice. You were archived? Mei stared at the panel. I don't know. The answer disturbed her more than the question. I thought of the hairpin. We went home. I placed it on the table between us. The silver had darkened with age, but I still remembered finding it in the bridal room. The first piece of Mei's story. I touched it. The apartment disappeared. The wedding manor was collapsing. Walls cracked. Red lanterns fell. The floor disappeared beneath darkness. I was not watching from my own memory. I was seeing through Mei. Her regret was gone. The truth had been found. She had not been abandoned. Somewhere beyond the collapsing manor, something opened. Darkness, quiet, peace. It called to her. Mei turned toward it. Then she heard my voice. I'll show you. The memory shifted. I saw myself walking away, leaving the dying domain. Mei looked at the darkness waiting for her. Then at me, she turned. And followed. The apartment returned. I pulled my hand away from the hairpin. Mei had not fought Red Veil. She had not escaped because she knew she was trapped. She had not even known the archive existed. She had simply been given somewhere else to go. And she chose it. Mei watched me carefully. What did you see? I looked at her. At the woman who had followed me out of her own ending. I opened my mouth. Red threads appeared around her throat. Mei went still. So did I. A panel opened between us. Escaped entity located. Chapter 6. She came. The red threads tightened around Mei's throat. I grabbed them. My fingers passed through. Mei, she reached for me. Then the threads vanished. Just like that, the red panel disappeared with them. For several seconds, neither of us moved. I touched Mei's throat. Solid, cold, still here. But the system had found her. We both knew that. Mei looked at the hairpin in my hand. What did you see? I hesitated. You followed me. She was quiet. After the manor collapsed, I continued. Something was calling you somewhere else. Where? I don't know. Mei looked down at the hairpin. But I left. Yes. With you. I swallowed. Yes. Her fingers closed slowly around mine. Why? I did not have an answer. Not one I was ready to give. Then the hairpin turned cold between our hands. colder than before. The room disappeared. I saw a locked door. A woman was pounding against it from the other side. "Open it!" Her voice broke. No one answered. She hit the door again. "Please." Mei went still beside me. The memory shifted. A dark room. A barred window. Hands pulling uselessly at wood that would not move. Outside, somewhere far away, wedding drums began to play. "No." The woman turned toward the sound. "No, no, no," Mei whispered beside me. "It's her." I looked at her. She was staring at the memory. The wedding drums stopped. Silence followed. Then the door finally opened. The woman ran. Through dark streets, past red lanterns, toward the manor. She came too late. The gates were already open. People stood inside. No one was celebrating. The woman stopped. She did not scream. She did not fall. She simply stood there. Her face became empty. Beside me, Mei stopped breathing. Not that she needed to. "She came," she whispered. The memory should have ended there. It did not. Time moved. Days, months, years. The woman grieved. Then she kept living. Her clothes changed. Her hair grew longer, then shorter. Gray appeared at her temples. She entered a temple. Years passed again. The young woman became an old one. An elderly nun sat beneath a tree. Someone beside her asked quietly, "Do you still remember the woman you lost?" The nun smiled. "Every day." "Does it still hurt?" She was silent for a while. Then she looked at the sky. "Not every day." The memory ended. I was back in the apartment. Mei stood in front of me. Tears ran silently down her face. She grew old. Yes. She had a life. Yes. Her face twisted. I pulled her toward me. This time I did not think about it. I did not wonder whether I should. I just held her. For a moment, Mei remained completely still. Then her hands gripped the back of my shirt. She cried without making a sound. I held on. There was nothing useful to say. No explanation that could return those years to either of them. No answer that could make what happened fair. So I stayed. Eventually, Mei became still. Her hands loosened. But neither of us moved away. There was one question I did not want to ask. I asked it anyway. "Do you still love her?" Mei answered immediately. "Yes." The answer hurt more than I expected. I hated that it did. Mei pulled back just enough to look at me. Her eyes were still wet. But I am not waiting for her anymore. Chapter 7. Then why did you follow me? But I am not waiting for her anymore. I should have felt relieved. I did. That was the problem. Mei had just watched the woman she loved grow old. She had finally learned the truth after waiting for centuries. And somehow, part of me was thinking about myself. I hated that. There was still one question I could not stop thinking about. "Do I remind you of her?" Mei looked at me. "No." The answer came immediately. I frowned. "You could have hesitated. Why?" "I don't know. It might have been polite." Mei considered this. "You are nothing like her." That should have made me feel better. For some reason it did not. How? She was quiet. I stared at her. "I am quiet. You talk constantly." "I do not." "You talk when you are nervous." "I'm not nervous." Mei continued as if I had said nothing. "You are also rude. You killed people. They were rude first." I opened my mouth, then closed it. There was no useful answer to that. Mei kept going. "You sleep badly. You drink too much coffee. You pretend not to be afraid when you are." Her voice became quieter. "And you lie when you are worried." I stopped. Mei knew me. Not the person who entered the wedding manor. Not the fortune teller who understood the rules. Me. The thought was more frightening than it should have been. I looked away. "Then why did you follow me?" For once, Mei did not answer immediately. I looked back at her. She was watching me carefully. "Because when my story ended, you said you would show me a new world." I remembered the collapsing manor. The darkness waiting for her. My own voice. "I'll show you," Mei continued. "And I wanted to go." She paused. "With you." I forgot how to speak. That was becoming a problem around her. Mei waited. I could have made a joke. I could have looked away. Instead, I reached for her hand. My fingers closed around hers. Mei went still. So did I. but I did not let go. Slowly, her fingers closed around mine. Something was different. I looked down. Her hand was cold, but not as cold as before. There was something beneath it. Faint, almost impossible. Warmth. Mei. Red light exploded across the room. Her fingers tightened around mine. A panel appeared. Archive entity located. No. The red threads came from everywhere. They wrapped around Mei's wrists, her waist, her throat. I grabbed her with both hands. Mei grabbed me back. The apartment distorted around us. For 1 second, I saw red lanterns, train tracks, a dark town beneath an endless night, then thousands of doors. Jisoo. Mei's voice was afraid. I pulled harder. I've got you. The threads tightened. Mei began to disappear. No, I held on. Her hand slipped through mine. I grabbed again. Nothing. Mei! Her face flickered. For 1 second, she was there. Then the red panel changed. Retrieval complete. Mei disappeared. My arms closed around empty air. Chapter 8. I wasn't asking. My arms closed around empty air. Mei, nothing. I stood there for several seconds, staring at the place where she had been. Then I searched the apartment. The bedroom. The chair. The sofa. The bathroom. Mei. 10 seconds passed. Then 20. I stopped counting. She was gone. I waited for the lights to turn red, for the familiar chime, for a panel to appear and tell me where I was going next. Nothing happened. The apartment remained silent. For 3 domains, Red Veil had taken me whenever it wanted. Now it had taken Mei, and apparently, it expected me to wait. Fine. I went to the table and picked up the hairpin. It was cold. I closed my hand around it and concentrated. Mei had crossed domain boundaries before. She had followed me through Bound Echo. If she could follow me, then the connection went both ways. It had to. I reached for the residue inside the hairpin. The apartment blurred. For 1 second, I saw red threads. I followed them. A panel appeared. Entry not authorized. The vision disappeared. I tried again. This time I pushed deeper. Past the memories in the hairpin, past the wedding manor, past everything I had already seen. I searched for the connection that should have been there. Nothing. Then I felt it. Faint. Almost gone. Warmth. The last trace of Mei's hand in mine. I grabbed onto it. The system reacted immediately. Entry not authorized. The words flashed red. I tightened my grip on the hairpin. I wasn't asking, I pulled. Something pulled back. The apartment split open. Not physically. 1 second I was standing beside the table. The next, the floor disappeared. I fell. There was no loading screen. No warning. No voice announcing a new domain. I hit the ground hard. For several seconds I stayed there. Then I looked up. Doors. Thousands of them. They stretched in every direction. Above me, below me, across distances that should not have fit inside any place. Some were old wooden doors. Some were apartment doors. Hospital doors. Temple gates. Train doors. Some were sealed with red thread. Others stood open. A few were shaking. Voices came from behind them. Someone crying. Someone laughing. A train arriving. A child calling for her mother. Wedding drums. Then a bell rang somewhere impossibly far away. I stood slowly. There were no rules. No objective, no timer. For the first time since Red Veil entered my life, the system told me nothing. I turned and saw a familiar door. Dark wood, red paper. The entrance to the wedding manor. A few steps away stood the doors of a train. Black station. Farther beyond them, almost lost among thousands of others, something moved beneath an endless night. I stopped. These were domains. All of them. My 3 had been nothing. 3 doors among thousands. A red panel appeared in front of me. Welcome back, Han Jisoo. I stared at the words. Back? I had never been here before. At least I didn't think I had. Chapter 9. The Last Archive. Welcome back, Han Jisoo. I stared at the words. Back? The panel disappeared. Of course it did. Where is Mei? Nothing answered. I looked at the thousands of doors surrounding me. Helpful. One of them opened. I waited. No objective appeared. No timer. No rule telling me not to enter. I almost missed the rules. Almost. I stepped through. The world on the other side should not have existed. Black railway tracks crossed beneath my feet. A section of the wedding manor stood beyond them. Red lanterns moved in a wind I could not feel. Behind it rose buildings from different centuries. A hospital, a temple, an apartment tower, a school with half its windows missing. None of them belonged together. Above everything, a bell rang. I knew that bell. The endless hunt. I turned slowly. Doors floated where walls should have been. Thousands of them, maybe more. Voices came from behind them. Final words, repeated again and again. I'm sorry. Wait for me. Don't leave. I'm here. I reached for the connection between Mei and me. Bound echo was still there, faint, painfully faint. But there, Mei, something pulled in my chest. I followed it. An open doorway appeared between two buildings. Inside, an elderly woman sat beside a bed. Someone lay beneath the blankets. Their breathing slowed, then stopped. The woman reached for their hand. She cried. I waited for the scene to reset. It did not. The room became quiet. Red words appeared above the doorway. Tragedy resolved, then archived. The door closed, gently. I stood there. Nothing had attacked me. No one had screamed. For once, Red Veil had simply kept something. I kept walking. Another door stood open. A man was running through a burning house. He reached a staircase. The ceiling collapsed. Darkness. Then he was running again. The same hallway. The same fire. The same staircase. Again. 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 I moved away. A voice whispered behind another door. Please, I stopped. Please don't forget me. Farther away, another voice screamed. Let me go, I turned. The words came from different doors. One begged to be remembered. One begged to be left alone. Red threads covered both. I kept walking. The voices followed me. Some cried. Some laughed. Some repeated names no living person probably remembered. Red Veil had not created these tragedies. It had found them. Kept them. A stone archway stood ahead. Most of it had collapsed. Words had been carved into the surface. I brushed my fingers across them. Dust fell away. Remember the forgotten. I stopped. The bell rang again. Somewhere behind me, a train arrived. Wedding drums began to play. Thousands of stories continued around me. Red Veil had never been a collection of games. The thought settled slowly. It had been remembering people. People the world had forgotten. I looked back at the doors, at the red threads, at the man still running through fire. Some stories rested. Some repeated. Some wanted to stay. Some did not. Red Veil kept all of them. I thought of Mei. No. I reached for Bound Echo again. The connection pulled me deeper. I followed. Past doors, past voices, past tragedies that had ended centuries before I was born. The warmth led me to a wall. For the first time, there were no doors, only rows of narrow drawers. Thousands of them. One stood open. I approached slowly. The pull in my chest became stronger. I expected Mei's name. Instead, I found mine. Jisoo. I froze. Beneath it, another line appeared. Domain formation. Failed. Chapter 10. The night she went home. Jisoo. Domain formation. Failed. I stared at my name. I'm not dead. Nothing answered. The drawer opened farther. Inside was a bus ticket. Old. Faded. I knew it before I touched it. No. My fingers closed around the paper. The archive disappeared. Cold air hit my face. The sea was black. A bridge stretched behind me, empty beneath the streetlights. I sat on a bench facing the water. 17 years old. Alone. I remembered this night. I had come to the sea because I did not intend to go home. Red words appeared above the water. Future desire, none. I watched my younger self. Her phone was turned off. The last bus had already left. She had nowhere she wanted to go. Nothing she wanted to do tomorrow. Nothing she could imagine changing. Another message appeared. Tragedy formation imminent. I stopped breathing. Red Veil had been here, all those years ago. Watching. Waiting. Footsteps approached. A young woman appeared beneath the streetlights. Maybe 20, maybe a little older. She carried a plastic bag from a convenience store. She looked at the empty benches, then sat beside me. My younger self did not react. The woman opened her bag. I missed the last bus. Silence. I checked the time before I came. Still nothing. I checked it wrong. I remembered her. I had forgotten her face. But I remembered being annoyed. The woman pulled out a drink. Tastes terrible. My younger self looked at her. Then why did you buy it? The woman looked surprised. Apparently, she had not expected me to answer. It was cheap. That doesn't make it taste better. No, I discovered that afterward. She took another sip anyway. For a while, neither of us spoke. The waves moved below us. Red words remained above the water. Tragedy formation. Imminent. The woman rubbed her hands together. It's freezing. I said nothing. What about you? My younger self looked at her. What? Are you going home? The question was simple. I looked back at the sea. No. Something changed in the woman's face. Only for a second. She did not ask why. She did not tell me life was beautiful. She did not say things would get better. She just asked, "Where are you going then?" I had no answer. I don't know. The woman nodded. Neither do I. I looked at her. She stood. That's tomorrow's problem. I frowned. What is? Everything. She picked up her plastic bag. I'm going somewhere warm. She took 2 steps, then stopped. She looked back at me. You coming? My younger self did not move. Neither did I. The red words above the water flickered. Future desire, none. The woman held out her hand. Come on. I stared at it. I'm freezing. She waited. No speech, no promise. Just a hand. Slowly, my younger self reached for it. The moment our fingers touched, the red words changed. Tragedy formation failed. The memory shifted. A convenience store. Bright lights. Cheap noodles. The woman complained about the bus again. I sat across from her. Still alive. Morning came. She left first. I never saw her again. She never knew what she had done. I took the first bus home. The archive returned. The old ticket was still in my hand. For years, I had told people I could read their futures. I couldn't. I had only learned to recognize the question underneath. Do I still have one? I thought of Mei. See the sea. Taste coffee? Ride an airplane. She had wanted tomorrow so badly that a dead woman had somehow begun leaving memories of it behind. I closed my hand around the ticket. Then, for the first time, the archive spoke. The voice came from everywhere. You should have ended. Chapter 11. Why Mei escaped. You should have ended. I stood very still. The voice had no direction. It came from the doors, the tracks, the walls, every story around me. I looked at my name. Domain formation failed. Sorry to disappoint you. The drawer closed. I turned. Where is Mei? No answer. Of course. A door opened behind me. Dark wood, red paper, the wedding manor. I knew that door. I walked through. The manor was collapsing. Red lanterns fell. Walls cracked. Darkness opened beneath the floor. I had seen this before, but not all of it. Mei stood in the bridal room, alone. Red words appeared around her. Regret, resolved. Past attachment, accepted. Mei looked toward the darkness. Another message appeared. Archiving. Red threads reached for her. She did not fight. Why would she? Her story was over. She knew the truth. The woman she loved had not abandoned her. There was nothing left to wait for. Then a voice came through the collapsing manor. Mine. I'll show you. Mei turned. I saw myself walking away, and something changed. Images appeared around her. A city she had never seen. Women walking alone, working, choosing their own clothes, choosing their own lives. The sea. A cup of coffee between cold hands. Snow beyond a warm window. An aeroplane crossing the sky. Then me, standing beside her. The red threads stopped. A panel flickered. Future desire detected. The entire manor shook. Error. Mei stared at the images. The archive waited behind her. I was leaving ahead. For 1 second, she stood between them. Then she stepped forward, after me. Archiving incomplete. Another step. Entity missing. The darkness closed behind her. The memory froze. I stared at Mei. At the moment, she chose to leave her ending. The ghost bride had ended. Mei had not. The wedding manor disappeared. I was back in the archive. Thousands of doors surrounded me. I finally understood. At 17, someone had held out a hand. She had not given me a reason to live. She had not solved anything. She had simply given me somewhere else to go. Years later, I had done the same for Mei. I had promised her a new world, and she wanted to see it. With me, red light appeared. A panel opened. Entity me, I stepped toward it. Status, unstable. My chest tightened. Another line appeared. External existence, unsustainable. No, the archive spoke. She cannot remain. I looked around. You said I should have ended too. Silence. And you were wrong. The doors trembled. I stepped closer to the panel. Where is she? Nothing. My hands curled into fists. Where is Mei? A door opened in the distance. Red lantern light spilled through. I started toward it. The voice came again. She has no body. I stopped. No independent existence. The door waited. Outside the archive, she will disappear. I looked at the red light. At the place where Mei was waiting. Then I'll find another way. The archive answered. There is none. Chapter 12. Some want to rest. There is none. I looked at the thousands of doors. At the red threads wrapped around them. At the stories red veil had kept for centuries. Then maybe none of this should exist. No, I turned. The voice had not come from the archive. A door stood open behind me. Inside was a small room. An old woman lay beneath a blanket. She looked asleep. I stepped closer. Her eyes opened. Are you here to wake me? I stopped. Do you want me to? No. The answer came immediately. The woman closed her eyes again. I was tired for a very long time. I stood there. Then stepped back. The door closed. I looked at the red threads. Destroying the archive would open every door, whether the person behind it wanted that or not. I kept walking. Please, another voice. I followed it. A figure stood behind a door covered in red thread. I could barely see her face. Do you know my name? No. Her expression fell. Then she whispered, Minseo. I looked at her. Minseo. She smiled. That was all. The door closed. I stared at it. She had not asked me to save her. She had not asked to leave. She only wanted someone to know she had existed. Then the voices began. Let me sleep. Please don't leave me here. Remember me. Let me go. I'm not finished. I turned. The voices came from everywhere. Thousands of doors. Thousands of endings. Some wanted peace. Some were terrified of disappearing. Some wanted to be remembered. Some wanted to forget. And I had no idea which was which. Stop! The voices continued, louder. I pressed my hands over my ears. It did nothing. They were not coming through sound. They were coming through the archive. Through the red threads connecting every door. I stared at the nearest one. Echo reconstruction showed me what had happened. Memories, regret, the past. But I did not need to know what had happened to them. I needed to know what they wanted now. I grabbed the thread. The archive opened. Everything hit me at once. Not memories. Desire. Rest. Fear. Loneliness. Hope. Someone wanted her door closed forever. Someone else had been waiting for it to open. A man wanted his children to remember his name. A woman wanted everyone to forget hers. Someone wanted one more day. Someone wanted nothing at all. Thousands of voices tore through me. A red panel appeared. Echo reconstruction. Overload. I tried to hold on. There were too many. Ability integrity. Critical. Pain split through my head. I let go. The voices stopped. I fell to my knees. For several seconds I could not move. Then I laughed. Of course. Red Veil had asked whether a tragedy was resolved. It had asked whether regret remained. Whether the story was complete. It had never asked the person what they wanted next. I looked at the thousands of doors. The archive was not the problem. The choice had been missing. You don't need to disappear. My voice echoed through the impossible space. I pushed myself to my feet. But you don't get to decide for them anymore. The archive did not answer. Then I heard her. Soft, distant, familiar. Who is there? I stopped breathing. Mei? The voice came again. Who is there? I ran. The archive changed around me. The hospital disappeared. The railway tracks ended. The thousands of doors became wooden walls. Red lanterns appeared. Wedding drums began to play. I knew this place. I knew that voice. I knew the door waiting at the end of the hallway. The wedding manor stood before me. Restored. Perfect. As if I had never left. From inside, Mei asked one more time, "Who is there?" I stopped outside the door. Chapter 13. Someone who came back. Who is there? I stood outside the door. The same question. The same manner. The same woman waiting on the other side. Everything had started here. I put my hand on the door. Someone who came back. I opened it. Mei sat beside the bed. Red wedding robes covered the floor around her. Her hair fell loose over her shoulders. Her skin was pale. Her hands rested quietly in her lap. She looked exactly as she had the first time I saw her. Then she looked at me. Nothing. No recognition. No annoyance. Not even the slight change in her eyes she always got before saying something that would ruin my day. Just nothing. "Who are you?" I forgot how to breathe. Red words appeared beside her. Entity restoration in progress. Identity. Ghost bride. Red threads moved through her robes, stitching, binding, restoring. I stepped forward. Mei. Her eyes narrowed. "Do not come closer." I stopped. She had never said that to me before. Not once. "Why are you here?" "For you." Her expression did not change. That hurt more than it should have. "Your name is Mei." Silence. "You left this place." "I did not." "You followed me." "I do not know you." I reached into my pocket. The hairpin was still there. I held it out. Mei looked at it. Something changed. Not recognition of me, something older, sadder. I lowered my hand. Of course. The hairpin belonged to the woman who had waited. I was trying to bring Mei back through a story that had already ended. That was not where I would find her. I put the hairpin away. "You hate television commercials?" Mei stared at me. "You thought shampoo could make people happy." A pause. "That makes no sense." I almost laughed. "There you are." Her expression tightened. "You asked why I closed the bathroom door. I would not ask that. You did. That is a private matter. You learned that later." Mei frowned. The red threads around her pulled tighter. I kept going. "You sit too close." "I do not." "You really do." A flicker. Gone. Black station. Mei's fingers moved. Just once. "You stood beside me on the train." The lanterns trembled. "You told them I was staying." Mei looked at me. I stepped closer. "You said, 'She stays.'" A train screamed somewhere beyond the walls. Mei flinched. "Stop. You made a list." The red threads tightened. "The sea." "Stop. Coffee." Her breathing changed. "An aeroplane." "Stop." "Modern clothes." The room began to shake. "Somewhere women can marry women," Mei stood. I said stop. Her voice was afraid. I had never heard the ghost bride sound afraid. I took another step. "You wanted to see the world." The threads pulled her back. "And you wanted to go with me?" Mei stared at me. "Why?" I stopped. "What? Why are you looking at me like that?" I had no answer. Not one I knew how to say. The red threads climbed higher. Around her wrists, her throat, pulling her back into the woman waiting in this room. I had found her, and she was disappearing in front of me again. So I stopped thinking. I crossed the distance between us, and kissed her. Mei froze. So did I. Her lips were cold. The kiss lasted barely a second. I pulled back. What had I just done? "Sorry." Mei stared at me. Nothing happened. No memory, no miracle. Just silence. I had definitely made everything worse. Then Mei lifted one hand. Her fingers touched her lips. A red panel appeared. Unclassified residue detected. I stopped. The lanterns flickered. Mei looked at me. "Have we done that before?" "No," she frowned. "Then why does it feel like I missed it?" The manor screamed. The red thread snapped. Images exploded around us. A sofa. A television. Nara laughing. City lights. 2 women holding hands. A piece of paper. "See the sea. Taste coffee." My hand reaching for hers. Mei's fingers closing around mine. Her own voice. "With you," Mei looked at me. This time she knew me. Her face changed. Jisoo. I could breathe again. She stepped toward me. You came. Of course I did. The walls split open. Red lanterns exploded. The ceiling disappeared. Beyond the broken manor waited thousands of doors. The archive. The voice came from everywhere. Choose. Chapter 14. A perfect ending. Choose. The broken manor became still. Red lanterns stopped in the air. Pieces of the ceiling hung above us, frozen before they could fall. A panel appeared. Choice 1. Archive entity, MEI. The room changed. Mei was sitting beside the bed again, but this time there was no grief, no waiting, no one she expected to return. The red threads around her loosened. The archive spoke. Her suffering will end. I looked at Mei. She looked around the quiet room. No, the image flickered. You will be remembered. Mei's expression did not change. I do not want my story to end here. The room disappeared. Another panel appeared. Choice 2. Preserve both. The manor vanished. I was home. Our apartment was warm. Snow fell outside the window. The television was on. 2 cups of coffee sat on the table. Mei stood beside me, solid, safe. The archive spoke. You may remain together. I looked at Mei. No separation. Her hand was warm in mine. No illness. The snow continued to fall. No death. The room was peaceful, perfect. You will never lose her. I looked at the clock. The second hand did not move. I looked outside. The same snowflake hung beyond the window. The coffee on the table did not cool. Nothing changed. Nothing ever would. Mei walked toward the window. Beyond the glass was the sea. Blue. Endless. Still. Not one wave moved. Mei stared at it. That is not the sea. No. I looked around the perfect room. That isn't a future. The archive did not answer. I walked to the table. The coffee smelled exactly the same as it had a moment ago. It would smell the same tomorrow, except there was no tomorrow here. I looked at Mei. I didn't promise to stay here with her. The room began to shake. I promised to show her the world. The apartment shattered. We stood in the broken manor again. Thousands of doors waited beyond the walls. I reached for Mei's hand. We're leaving. Entity cannot leave. Watch us. Entity requires definition. A panel opened between us. Ghost. Rejected. Domain boss. Rejected. Archived tragedy. Rejected. I stared at the words. Her name is Mei. Name insufficient. She's a person. The panel flickered. Definition invalid. My jaw tightened. She thinks. She wants things. She makes terrible comments about my coffee. Mei looked at me. Your coffee is terrible. Not helping. The archive ignored us. Define entity. She came with me. Definition rejected. I stopped. She's with me. Definition rejected. The words stayed in front of me. I wanted to argue, to force the system to understand. Then I realized what I was doing. Again, defining Mei by where she came from, by what she had been. By me, I looked at her. For so long, I had been trying to save her. Keep her, pull her back. But this was not my answer to give. I let go of her hand. Then I stepped back. Mei looked at me. I said nothing. The archive asked again. Define entity. Mei stepped forward. My name is Mei. Chapter 15. I want to live. My name is Mei. The archive waited. Then, definition incomplete. Mei looked at the thousands of doors, at the red threads, at all the stories that had already ended. Then she looked at me. I choose a future. The archive shook. Doors opened, closed, opened again. Desired resolution. Mei stood very still. I do not want a resolution. The red threads moved around her, waiting. Mei lifted her head. I want to live. For the first time, the archive had no answer. Then every panel began to flicker. Request invalid, entity deceased. Mei looked at the words. I am aware. I almost laughed. Of course, that was her answer. The archive trembled. Red threads moved through the thousands of doors. Searching. Trying to understand something it had never been built to understand. not an ending. What came after? Finally, a new panel appeared. Physical existence requires anchor. I knew before the next words appeared. Bound echo detected. My chest tightened. The connection between us. The thing that had let Mei follow me out of the wedding manor. The thing that had kept her in my world. The archive continued. Convert bound echo? Yes, Mei said. Wait, she looked at me. More words appeared. Immortality, lost. Domain authority, lost. Supernatural existence, lost. The panels kept coming. Entity will age. Entity will experience illness. Entity will experience pain. Then, entity will die. I looked at Mei. She answered immediately. I already died. I stared at her. Mei did not look afraid. She looked at the thousands of doors. Then back at me. I would like to try living first. The archive changed. The panels turned toward me. I already knew I was not going to like this part. Anchor conversion requires exchange. My abilities appeared one by one. Residual reading, echo reconstruction, domain access, supernatural sensitivity. Then the last one. Bound echo. A single word appeared beneath them. Permanently lost. I swallowed. Another line appeared. Ability to perceive supernatural entities. Lost. The archive became very quiet. So did I. Mei understood first. No, I looked at her. No. Mei. If it fails, you will never see me again. I know. You will not hear me. I know. Her voice changed. You will not know if I am still beside you. I know. The red threads between us began to glow. The archive waited. Mei stepped closer. Then don't. I looked at her. At the woman who had spent more than a century waiting for a life that never came. At the woman who wanted to see the sea, taste coffee, ride an aeroplane, see what came next. A future isn't a future if you can't live. Mei stared at me. The final warning appeared. Bound echo must be severed before conversion can be confirmed. No test. No way to know first. I laughed once. Of course. Jisoo. The archive asked, confirm? Mei reached for me. I took her hand. Cold. Still cold. The final message appeared. The entity will no longer belong to you. I looked at Mei. She never did. I confirmed. The connection broke. Mei disappeared. No scream, no light. No goodbye. 1 second her hand was in mine. The next, there was nothing. The archive vanished. The doors, the voices, the red threads, all of it, gone. I opened my eyes. I was on the apartment floor. Alone. For a moment, I could not move. Then I sat up. Mei? Nothing. I reached for bound echo. There was nothing to reach for. No warmth in my chest. No thread connecting us. No sense of someone standing just outside my vision. Mei? Silence. 10 seconds, 20, I did not know. That was the worst part. She could be gone. Or she could be standing beside me, calling my name. And I would never know. I closed my eyes. Then a hand touched mine, warm. I froze. I looked down. Living skin. Warm fingers. Then I looked up. Mei was there, breathing, crying. I reached for her. This time Mei was warm. I pulled her against me. She held me back. Neither of us spoke. For once I had nothing clever to say. Then, Jisoo. What? Now I have to try that coffee. I started laughing. I could not stop. Mei pulled back. Why are you laughing? I held her tighter. Because you're going to hate it.
Thank you so much for watching Jisoo and Mei's story all the way to the end. This story began as a horror girls' love survival story, but became something much more personal to me. A story about grief, choice, and second chances. Thank you for staying with Jisoo and Mei through every domain, every heartbreak, and every promise. If you enjoyed this series, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel and lets me know you want more original GL audio novels. And for anyone who wants extra bonus content, channel members may get future short side stories, quiet after ending scenes, and exclusive mini GL moments with Jisoo and Mei. Thank you for listening. With love, Keiko.